"Who dares touch my armor?" The warrior queen roared. The human janitor said calmly, "I fixed it." The Kethra's fang shuddered like a dying animal, its hull screaming as scarved plasma lances carved through the outer armor. Alarms wailed in three-part harmony: red for hull breach, amber for casualties, white for proximity alert. Andrew had learned to ignore them all during his 6-month rotation aboard the Valari flagship. Just more background noise, like the thrumming engines or the constant low growl of the crew moving through the corridors. What he couldn't ignore was the smell. Burnt ozone mixed with something organic and wrong. Scar Vicar, probably, from the boarding pods that had punched through Deck 7 like cancer cells metastasizing through healthy tissue. The scent told him the waste reclamation systems were about to fail, which meant he'd be elbow-deep in sewage conduits for the next 12 hours. Again. He pushed his mop cart down the maintenance corridor toward the lower bay, boots squeaking on deck plates that still held a mirror shine despite the chaos above. The Valari might be losing a war, but damned if Andrew would let them lose it in a dirty ship. Colony ship engineering had taught him one immutable truth: systems failed when people stopped caring about the small things. A clogged air filter here, a corroded seal there. Those were the cracks that broke civilizations. The maintenance bay door hissed open, releasing a cloud of steam that carried the sharp bite of coolant and something else, something electrical burning. Andrew's hand went to his tool belt by instinct, fingers brushing past the sonic wrench and polymer sealant to grip the compact fire suppressor. 3 years on the colony ship, New Providence, had given him a doctorate in things that shouldn't be on fire. The steam cleared enough for him to see it. Queen Solana's personal armor lay sprawled across the deck like the shed skin of some magnificent beast. The neutronium weave still held its impossible luster, white as snow on a world Andrew had never seen, but the left flank piece gaped open. Wires spilled from the wound like metallic intestines, and the quantum lattice beneath flickered with dying light. Coolant pooled around the chest plate, hissing as it evaporated. Andrew knelt beside it without thinking. His hands moved of their own accord, tracing the fracture, finding the stress points where the armor had finally surrendered to whatever hell the Queen had walked through. Plasma scoring marked the outer surface. The inner lining was still warm. She'd been in this recently. Very recently. He pulled the microtorch from his belt, adjusted the flame to its narrowest setting, and began work on the primary rupture. The fracture ran deeper than he'd thought. Not just the outer weave, but the power distribution network beneath. Whoever designed this suit had understood that every system needed redundancy, but even redundancy failed when you pushed hard enough. He could fix this. The conduit wire from his cart would bridge the gap temporarily. And if he could get creative with the polymer... "Who dares touch my armor?" The voice hit him like a pressure wave. Not loud, volume would have been easier to dismiss, but present, the way a storm was present when you stepped outside and felt the air itself had turned hostile. Each word landed as its own sentence, punctuated by the soft click of claws on deck plating. Andrew didn't look up. His hand stayed steady, torch flame tracing the conduit wire into place. "I'm fixing it," he said. "Unless you'd rather have it leak all your life support next time you need it." The temperature in the bay seemed to drop 10 degrees. He could feel her behind him now, close enough that her shadow fell across the armor. Close enough that he caught the scent of her. Alien but not unpleasant, like copper and cinnamon and something wild that had no Earth equivalent. "Look at me." Andrew sealed the final wire junction, killed the torch, and looked up. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure, standing 7 feet tall in her combat boots, her skin that impossible shade of rose pink that defied every human expectation of what alien meant. Not green or gray or blue, but pink, warm and organic and so vividly alive it made his throat tight. Her armor was half shed, chest plate removed to reveal the carbon fiber bodysuit beneath, dark as midnight against her skin. Sweat gleamed at her collarbones. Her ears, tall and black-tufted, lay flat against her skull, and her tail, that ridiculous, beautiful tail, lashed behind her with enough force to dent deck plating. Her lips pulled back from fangs that could tear through starship hull. You, she said, her voice dropping to something between a growl and a purr, are the janitor. Systems engineer, Andrew corrected, rising to his feet. She still had 6 inches on him. He met her amber eyes anyway, noting the gold flecks that caught the emergency lighting. Waste reclamation specialist is the current contract, but I've done everything from plasma conduit repair to nanoforge calibration. Your armor's not that different from a colony ship's environmental suit, just better materials and significantly more expensive. Her nostrils flared. For a moment he thought she might actually bite him, and some distant part of his brain noted that would be a stupid way to die after surviving 3 scarv raids. Then her eyes flicked past him to the armor, to the sealed fracture already hardening into something stronger than the original weave thanks to the polymer matrix, to the power distribution network humming back to life, circuits lighting up in cascading sequence. She moved like water, fluid and inevitable, reaching past him to lift the chest plate. Her claws, retractable he noticed, currently extended about 2 inches, traced the repair with delicate precision. The HUD flickered to life inside the helmet, painting her face in cyan light. You used cafeteria polymer, she said, and conduit wire from the waste processing backup system. Andrew gestured to his cart. That wire's rated for corrosive environments. Your quantum lattice was failing because the original wiring couldn't handle the power draw. This should give you another 30% efficiency. Solana's ears rotated forward. Her tail stopped lashing. She took a step closer, hemming him against the bulkhead with nothing but proximity and presence. The armor plate remained in her left hand, held with casual strength that made Andrew acutely aware of how easily those claws could open him up. Her right hand came up, gauntlet still in place, and pressed flat against the wall beside his head. "Show me," she breathed. "Ma'am, show me how it works. Prove you haven't sabotaged it." Andrew's pulse hammered in his throat, but his hand stayed steady as he reached for the chest plate. She didn't move back, didn't give him space. Just watched with those predator eyes as he activated the diagnostic subroutine, fingers flying across the holographic interface that materialized between them. "Here," he said, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Your OS is non-standard, but the underlying architecture is a derivative of the adaptive biometric code we used on high-end envirosuits. Once you get past the Velari shell, the logic is the same." He highlighted the power distribution network. "Your original system routed everything through single-path circuits. Efficient under normal load, but you're not operating under normal conditions. 3 Scarv fleet engagements in 2 weeks means you're pushing this armor past design specs. The polymer matrix I used creates a distributed network. If one path fails, power reroutes automatically. No more cascade failures." Her breath was warm against his cheek. The air smelled of coolant and cinnamon. "And if you're wrong, then the armor fails and you die." Andrew met her eyes. "But it would have failed anyway with that fracture. At least this way you have a chance." For 3 heartbeats, silence held the bay. Somewhere above them, the ship's guns thundered. The deck vibrated with distant impacts. And Queen Solana, warrior empress of the Velari, her skin flushed darker with something that wasn't quite anger, smiled. "Put it on me," she commanded. Andrew's mouth went dry. "Ma'am, I don't have clearance to—" "I am your clearance." She stepped back just enough to drop the chest plate into his hands, then turned, presenting him with the elegant line of her spine. "The Scarv are at our throat, Janitor. I don't have time for protocol." His hands shook. Just a little. Just enough that he had to take a breath before reaching for the plate. The armor was lighter than it looked, balanced like a weapon, warm from her touch. He lifted it into position, aligning the neural interface points with the sockets in her bodysuit, feeling the magnetic locks engage with soft clicks that ran up his arms. She shivered as the connections made contact. Her tail brushed his thigh, accident or intent he couldn't tell, and her ears twitched back toward him as the suit powered up. "The flank piece," she said, her voice rough. "Quickly." Andrew grabbed it from the deck, still warm, still dripping coolant. The fracture he'd sealed gleamed in the low light, polymer matrix already hardening to match the neutronium weave. He moved around her side, acutely aware of how close this forced him to stand, how the curve of her hip filled his peripheral vision as he aligned the plate. The suit accepted the connection with a pulse of light that ran through every circuit, every conduit, every quantum lattice fiber. Solana's sharp intake of breath told him the suit's biofeedback was coming online, connecting to her nervous system in ways that made his colony ship experience seem like children's toys. She flexed her shoulders, rolled her neck, extended and retracted her claws, testing the gauntlet response time. Then she moved. One moment, Andrew was standing beside her, hands still on the flank plate. The next, his back hit the bulkhead hard enough to rattle his teeth, and Solana's forearm was across his chest, pinning him with armor-enhanced strength that could have crushed his sternum if she wanted. Her face was inches from his. Her pupils had dilated to almost swallow the amber of her eyes. "It works," she purred, and the vibration went through his entire body. "It works better. What did you do?" "Recalibrated the power distribution ratios to account for the new wiring paths," Andrew managed. His heart hammered against her forearm. "The quantum lattice is more efficient now. You should see improved response time across all systems." "Improved?" Her tail coiled around his ankle. The janitor improved the Royal Armorer's work. The Royal Armorer wasn't working with cafeteria polymer and stolen wire. Andrew's voice came out steadier than he felt. "I worked with what I had. That's what colony ship engineers do. We fix everything with nothing." Solana's ears flicked forward. Her weight shifted, pressing closer, and Andrew became acutely aware of the heat radiating through her armor, the way the bodysuit left nothing to imagination, the alien architecture of her face that shouldn't have been beautiful, but somehow was. "What's your name, janitor?" "Andrew Chen, systems engineer, formerly of the colony ship New Providence, currently contracted to waste reclamation services aboard." "Andrew," his name on her tongue sounded like a secret. "You will report to this bay every night at 22 hours. The armor requires regular maintenance." It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." She held him there for another moment, her eyes searching his face for something he couldn't name. Then she released him, stepping back with that liquid grace, her tail uncoiling from his ankle with deliberate slowness. "The scarf will breach the inner perimeter within 6 hours," she said, turning toward the bay door. "When they do, I'll need this armor to hold. Don't disappoint me, Andrew." She was gone before he could respond, leaving only the lingering scent of cinnamon and the cooling footprints of her boots on the deck. Andrew slid down the bulkhead until he was sitting, his legs suddenly unwilling to support his weight. His hands trembled now, adrenaline and something else flooding his system. He stared at the spot where she'd stood, where the armor had blazed with impossible light, where the most powerful being in the Valari Empire had pressed him against a wall and purred his name. Tomorrow the scarf would come. Tonight he had maintenance to do. He pulled himself to his feet, grabbed his mop cart, and got back to work. The small things mattered, especially now. The breach alarm caught Andrew in the middle of recalibrating a waste processor on Deck 9. He'd just finished explaining to the processor's AI why converting organic waste to fertilizer didn't mean storing it in the water recycling tanks when the ship's hull rang like a struck bell. Once, twice, 3 times. "Boarding pods." "Acknowledged," he muttered to the still protesting AI, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. The stains wouldn't come out anyway, they never did, and he had maybe 90 seconds before the scarf cut their way through the outer hull, long enough to reach his cart, long enough to grab the carbon nanotube mop handle he'd been meaning to return to supply for 3 months. Long enough to accept he was about to die in a hallway that smelled like recycled air and lemon cleaner. The deck shuddered. Somewhere close, maybe 2 sections forward, metal screamed as something very sharp met something very thick and lost. Andrew ran anyway, tool belt jangling, boots pounding deck plates that he'd polished yesterday to a shine the Valari crew had actually noticed. Small victories. He rounded the corner toward the maintenance bay and collided with Solana. Not metaphorically, literally crashed into her at a dead sprint, bounced off armor that felt like hitting a bulkhead, and would have landed on his ass if her hand hadn't shot out and caught him by the collar. Andrew. She hauled him upright with one hand, the other gripping a plasma rifle that looked small in her gauntlets. Her armor blazed with active camouflage, cyan circuits pulsing beneath the neutronium weave. "You run toward the breach?" "My cart's in the bay," he gasped. "And the mop." "The mop." Her ears flattened. "Scarv warforms are cutting through E-section and you're worried about a mop?" Andrew pulled free of her grip, resettled his collar, and met her eyes. "That mop handle is compressed carbon nanotube composite rated for 1,500 psi of lateral stress. It'll punch through Scarv chitin like tissue paper. The rest of my cleaning supplies are just bonus." For a heartbeat, Solana stared at him. Then her lips pulled back from her fangs in what might have been a smile or a snarl, or both. "Show me." She didn't wait for a response. Just grabbed his wrist, carefully, he noted, claws retracted, and hauled him toward the maintenance bay at a speed that would have dislocated his shoulder if she hadn't been supporting most of his weight. They covered the distance in seconds, the bay door hissing open to reveal his cart exactly where he'd left it, surrounded by the Queen's Armor maintenance station. Andrew grabbed the mop handle, 5 feet of matte black composite, weighted perfectly, already showing stress marks where he'd used it to pry open a stuck bulkhead last week. He gave it an experimental spin, still balanced. "This," Solana said, pulling him toward the door again, "is insane. Welcome to colony ship engineering." The screaming started as they hit the corridor. Not human screaming, Velari, their voices hitting registers that made Andrew's teeth ache. The breach was 2 sections forward, right where he'd estimated. Plasma fire lit the hallway in stuttering cyan bursts, painting shadows that danced and died and danced again. The air tasted of ozone and burnt meat. Solana moved like violence given form, rifle coming up to her shoulder, tail lashing for balance as she dropped to one knee and fired. The plasma bolt caught a Scarv warform center mass, 4 feet of chitinous nightmare, mandibles dripping acid, too many legs moving too fast, and punched through its thorax. It fell in pieces, ichor spraying across the deck. 2 more came through the breach. Andrew didn't think. Thinking was for problems you could solve with math and patience. This required the part of his brain that had kept him alive through a reactor breach on the New Providence, the part that ran on instinct and muscle memory, and the absolute certainty that standing still meant dying. The mop handle whistled as it cut air, momentum, and carbon fiber density, combining into something that would have made his high school physics teacher proud. The first Scarv lost its forward legs, the composite handle shearing through chitin like Andrew had claimed. It stumbled. He followed through, spinning, bringing the handle back around to catch it in the head analog with a crack that echoed over the plasma fire. Green ichor splattered his jumpsuit. "Andrew!" Solana's roar mixed warning and something else as she fired past him, her plasma bolt taking the second Scarv before it could spray him with acid. The hallway fell silent except for the hiss of dissolving chitin and the hammer of his pulse in his ears. Andrew looked down at the mop handle. A chunk of chitin was embedded in the composite. He'd have to sand that out. Solana grabbed his shoulder, spun him around. Her amber eyes were wide, pupils dilated so far they'd almost swallowed the gold. "You just killed a Scarv warform with a cleaning implement." "Compressed carbon nanotube composite," Andrew corrected. "Technically, it's a structural support tool. She kissed him. Not gently, not carefully. Her mouth crashed into his with the same violence she'd used to kill the Scarv, fangs scraping his lower lip, one hand fisted in his collar and the other still gripping the plasma rifle. She tasted like copper and combat stimulants and something wild that shorted out every rational thought in his brain. Then she shoved him back against the bulkhead, gently, by her standards, which still rattled his spine, and pressed her forehead to his. Her breath came hard and fast, ears flat against her skull, tail wrapped around his calf with enough pressure to leave bruises. "Stay behind me," she growled, "and keep that ridiculous weapon ready." More Scarv poured through the breach. What followed wasn't a battle. Battles implied strategy, coordination, some kind of organized response. This was 2 people in a hallway with plasma and carbon fiber and rage, turning a Scarv insertion team into smears on the deck. Solana moved like water, like fire, like every predator instinct evolution had ever gifted to Veilari kind. Her armor blazed with each shot, power distribution network routing energy with impossible efficiency. His efficiency, Andrew noted with distant pride, and her claws extended when she ran dry, raking through chitin with ease that should have been impossible. Andrew followed her like a shadow, the mop handle rising and falling with mechanical precision. He'd learned to kill on the New Providence when raiders came for their supplies. You aimed for joints, for sensory organs, for the structural weak points that every creature had if you looked hard enough. Scarv were just another problem to solve, another system to break down into component parts. His arms burned, his lungs burned, green ichor covered him from collar to boots. And through it all, Solana's tail stayed coiled around some part of him, his wrist when they fought back to back, his waist when she pulled him out of an acid spray, his ankle when she needed to know exactly where he was without looking. The last scarf fell with Andrew's mop handle through its thorax and Solana's claws in its skull. They stood in the wreckage, both breathing hard, surrounded by the dead. "Field testing complete," Solana said. Her voice came out rough, almost broken. "The armor held." "Told you." Andrew pulled the handle free, examined it. 3 stress fractures. He could fix those. Cafeteria polymer and stolen wire. Can't beat colony ship engineering. She turned to face him. Her armor was scorched, dented, painted in Scarv ichor that hissed as it ate at the neutronium weave. Her bodysuit was torn along one shoulder, revealing pink skin striped with what would be impressive bruises by morning. Her ears were still flat against her skull, but her eyes... Her eyes held something Andrew couldn't name. Shouldn't name. Not here, not now, not with the dead still cooling around them and alarms still screaming in the distance. "The bay," she said. 22 hours. Don't be late." "Yes, ma'am." She left him there, moving back toward the bridge with that impossible grace, her tail flicking once in what might have been goodbye or invitation or both. Andrew watched until she rounded the corner, then looked down at his mop handle. 3 stress fractures and a chip in the composite. He could fix those. He could fix anything. Andrew arrived at the maintenance bay at 21:55, carrying a sonic toothbrush, a tube of cafeteria polymer, and the growing suspicion that he'd misread the entire situation. Queens didn't ask janitors for private meetings. They especially didn't ask janitors they'd kissed in combat-induced adrenaline rushes. Except Solana had, and Andrew had learned on the colony ships that when someone with the power to space you made a request, you showed up early. The bay was dark except for the glow strips along the deck and the soft cyan pulse of the armor's diagnostic station. Solana stood beside it, her back to the door, wearing less than he'd expected. The bodysuit was gone. She wore only the minimal underlayers, compression shorts and a band across her chest that left her pink skin exposed from shoulders to hips. She didn't turn when he entered. "You're early," she said. "Colony ship habit. Systems don't wait for convenient scheduling." Andrew set his supplies on the workbench, hyper-aware of the way her tail swayed gently, the play of muscle beneath her skin, the elegant architecture of her spine. "You wanted deeper diagnostics on the armor?" "I wanted to understand how a janitor fixed what the royal armorer couldn't." Now she turned, and the look in her amber eyes made Andrew's breath catch. "You said colony ship engineer. Tell me what that means." Andrew pulled up a stool, gestured for her to sit. She did, with that liquid grace, positioning herself between him and the armor station, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her skin, smell that cinnamon copper scent that he was starting to associate with her presence. "Colony ships are closed systems," he began, pulling out the sonic toothbrush and polymer. "Everything recycles: air, water, waste, heat. You launch with finite resources to last 50 years minimum. When something breaks, you can't exactly call for replacement parts. So you improvise." She watched him set up, ears rotating to track his movements. "We innovate. There's a difference." Andrew activated the sonic toothbrush, adjusting the frequency. "Improvisation is making do. Innovation is making better. Your armor wasn't designed for the kind of sustained combat you're putting it through. The royal armorer built it for ceremonial use with occasional action. I rebuilt it for war." He reached for her arm, hesitated. "May I?" Solana extended her arm without a word, and Andrew's fingers wrapped around her wrist, carefully, always carefully, aware that she could break every bone in his hand if she wanted. Her skin was warm, impossibly soft over the muscle beneath. He turned her arm, examining the interface points where the armor connected to her nervous system. "Here," he said, touching a point just below her elbow. "And here. The neural interface is causing feedback loops. Your armor's reading your biometrics, but it's also broadcasting back to you. Every time you take damage, you feel it twice, once from the actual impact, once from the suit telling you about it." Solana's pupils dilated. "You can tell that from touching my arm?" "I can tell that from the bruising pattern around the interface points. See?" He traced a finger along her skin, following the faint discoloration. "The polymer matrix I used has acoustic dampening properties. If I can recalibrate the interfaces with a specific frequency..." He raised the sonic toothbrush. "This should help." "You're going to fix my neural interface with a toothbrush." "Technically, it's the frequency generator that matters. The toothbrush is just a convenient housing." Andrew activated it, the hum rising to a pitch just below audible. "Hold still." He pressed the toothbrush against the interface point. Solana went rigid, her breath hissing between her fangs. The frequency propagated through her skin, through the subcutaneous network, through the quantum lattice that connected her to the armor. On the diagnostic station, data began to cascade across the screens. "Andrew," his name came out strangled, "what?" "The frequency is breaking up scar tissue around the interface. It's going to hurt for a minute, then..." Solana's entire body shuddered. Her free hand shot out, claws extended, and scored 4 parallel lines in the workbench 6 inches from his hand. Her tail lashed once, twice, then coiled around his forearm with crushing force. Then she purred. The sound vibrated through his entire arm, up his shoulder into his chest, deep and resonant and so fundamentally pleased that Andrew's higher brain functions temporarily shut down. Her head tipped back, exposing the elegant line of her throat, and her ears lay flat against her skull in what he was learning meant overwhelming sensation. "Don't stop." Each word came between purrs that made the air vibrate. Andrew moved the toothbrush to the second interface point. Her claws scored the bench again, her tail tightened around his arm, the purring intensified until he could feel it in his bones. On the diagnostic station, the armor's HUD flared to life, projecting data across every surface, including Solana's skin. Glowing lines traced her nervous system in cyan light, mapping the interface network from her arms up her shoulders, across her collarbones, down her spine. "The feedback loops are clearing," Andrew managed, his voice rough. "I need to trace the lines to make sure..." "Touch me," Solana commanded, and there was nothing gentle in her voice. "Trace them, all of them." His hand shook as he lifted it, following the glowing line from her elbow to her shoulder. Her skin was fever-hot beneath his palm, muscle coiling and releasing as he moved. The line continued across her collarbone, and Andrew's calloused fingers traced it with delicate precision, acutely aware that this was the warrior queen of the Veilari Empire, purring under his hands like she was being worshipped. The line dipped between her breasts. He stopped. "Andrew." Her hand came up to cup the back of his head, claws threading through his hair with careful threat. "I gave you an order." He continued, down her sternum, across her ribs, tracing the stress fractures in her neural network that the armor had been exploiting for months. The sonic toothbrush hummed in his other hand, following the path his fingers made, breaking up the scar tissue, recalibrating the interfaces with each pass. The purring never stopped. Solana's other hand found his shoulder, claws pricking through his jumpsuit. She pulled him closer until he was standing between her knees, until her breath was warm against his neck, until every exhale carried that cinnamon copper scent that was driving him quietly insane. "The spine," she breathed, "the primary interface runs down my spine." Andrew's hands trembled as he moved around her. The glowing line traced her vertebrae from neck to tail, each point a node in the neural network. He started at her shoulders, following the line down with one hand while the sonic toothbrush cleared scar tissue with the other. Solana's claws dug into his shoulders, her tail wrapped around his waist, and she purred so hard the deck plates vibrated. "There," Andrew said when he reached the base of her spine, where the line terminated just above her tail. "That's the primary node. The feedback loop was strongest here. Every hit you took went straight to your brainstem." "Fix it." The command came out barely coherent. He pressed the toothbrush against the node, applied the polymer with his other hand, fingers spreading it across her skin in careful circles, feeling the heat of her through the compound. The diagnostic station flared bright enough to paint the entire bay cyan, and Solana's entire body arched against him. The purring stopped. For a moment, terrible silence. Then she moved. Andrew's back hit the bulkhead for the second time in 2 days, but this time there was no armor between them. Just skin against his jumpsuit, heat and muscle, and the press of her body against his with enough force to drive the air from his lungs. Her mouth found his neck, fangs scraping carefully, tongue tasting sweat and polymer residue. "The armor works better," she purred against his throat. "The interface is perfect. What did you do?" "Acoustic dampening," Andrew gasped. His hands had found her waist without permission from his brain, fingers splayed across pink skin that felt like silk over steel. "The polymer absorbs the feedback before it reaches your nervous system. You'll still feel damage. You need that for combat awareness, but it won't overwhelm your senses." "Innovation," Solana breathed, "not improvisation." "Yes." She pulled back just enough to look at him, her amber eyes nearly black with dilated pupils, her skin flushed darker across her cheeks and throat. "The colony ships taught you this?" "The colony ships taught me that every system can be improved if you understand what it's trying to do." Andrew's hands stayed on her waist because moving them seemed impossible. "Your armor is magnificent, but it was hurting you. I fixed that." "You fixed me." Her tail tightened around his waist, "not just the armor." She kissed him again, slower this time, deliberate. Her tongue traced his lower lip, tasting him, learning him. Her hands framed his face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from claws that could tear through steel. And when she pulled back, something had shifted in her eyes, something warm and dangerous and entirely focused on him. "Tomorrow," she said, "you'll fix the honor guard suits. They're experiencing similar feedback issues." "Yes, ma'am." "Tonight." Her claws traced down his chest, catching on the fabric of his jumpsuit. "Tonight you stay here. I need to test the repairs. Thoroughly." Andrew's mouth went dry. "How thoroughly?" Solana's smile was all fang and promise. "Colony ship engineers fix everything with nothing. Yes?" "Yes." "Good." She stepped back, turned toward the armor station. The glowing lines still traced her skin, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "Because I'm broken in ways the Royal Armorer never knew existed. And Andrew?" "Yes." She looked back over her shoulder, tail swaying. "Take off the jumpsuit. You're covered in scarf ichor, and I won't have it on my deck." He did. And if his hands shook as he stripped down to his undershirt and boxers, if Solana's eyes tracked every movement with predatory focus, if the bay suddenly felt too warm and too small and exactly right, colony ship engineers learned to improvise. And sometimes Andrew was learning improvisation and innovation were the same thing after all. The bridge of the Kethra's Fang hummed with controlled chaos. Tactical displays painted the viewport in cyan and amber, tracking the Scarv fleet as it regrouped near the fourth moon. Crew moved with efficient precision, their voices low and clipped, ears flat with focus. And in the center of it all, High Priestess Vera stood behind the command throne, silver fur gleaming under emergency lighting, her milky eyes tracking everything, including the anomaly on the tactical officer's screen. "Commander!" The young female's voice cracked, her lavender skin flushed darker with stress, her tail flicked in rapid nervous bursts as she pulled up the data. "There's something in the armor diagnostic logs, a signature I don't recognize." Vera moved with the silence of old age and long practice, her staff clicking softly against the deck. "Show me." The screen flickered, displaying the cascade of data from last night's maintenance session. Power distribution networks, neural interface calibrations, stress analysis, all normal, all expected. Except for the fragment of code buried in the quantum lattice subroutines. Foreign? Hue active? When did this appear? Vera's voice remained calm, but her grip on the staff tightened. After the janitor performed his repairs. The tactical officer pulled up secondary data, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. The signature is embedded in the polymer matrix he used. It's interfacing with the suit's core systems. Define interfacing. It's not hostile, at least not that I can detect. She bit her lower lip, ears pivoting nervously. It's more like a handshake protocol. The armor is recognizing the signature and responding to it, optimizing around it. Vera studied the data, her mind working through possibilities. The human had impressed Solana. That much was obvious from the way their queen's scent had changed, from the way she now prowled the ship with new energy. But humans were clever. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves before the Velari found them scattered across failing colony ships. And now a human janitor had somehow embedded his species' technology in the Queen's armor. Where is he now? Armory Level 3, the Queen ordered him to service the Honor Guard's suits. The tactical officer's voice dropped. Commander, if this signature is in their suits too, then we will know by day's end. Vera turned, her robes sweeping the deck. Say nothing of this, not to the guard, not to anyone. I will bring this to Her Majesty personally. She found Solana in her private forge, still wearing the armor, running combat drills against holographic Scarv. The Queen moved like violence incarnate, fluid, precise, unstoppable. Each strike flowed into the next, each dodge perfectly timed. The repaired armor blazed with power that shouldn't have been possible. Vera waited at the threshold, staff in hand, until Solana ended the sequence with a plasma bolt that vaporized the final hologram. The Queen turned, ears forward, tail swaying with satisfaction. Priestess, you rarely visit the forge. I rarely have cause. Vera stepped inside, the door sealing behind her with a hiss. Your armor performs remarkably well. The human's repairs exceed all expectations. Solana's eyes narrowed. But there is a signature in the quantum lattice, human code embedded in the polymer matrix. It's interfacing with your suit's core systems. Vera pulled up a data tablet displaying the analysis. Every optimization, every efficiency gain, they all trace back to this signature. For 3 heartbeats, silence held the forge. Then Solana's lips pulled back from her fangs. You accuse Andrew of sabotage. I accuse no one. I present facts. Vera's voice remained level, but her ears flattened. The question is what these facts mean. Human technology and Velari armor. Human code speaking to Velari systems. This is not simple repair work, my queen. Solana's claws extended with soft clicks. She stalked forward until she towered over the priestess, tail lashing. Andrew saved my life. He killed Scarv with a cleaning tool. He fixed what our royal armorer couldn't. Or he embedded a protocol that makes you dependent on human intervention. Vera held her ground, though her tail tucked close. I served your mother through 3 wars, Solana. I know sabotage. This could be subtle, making our armor require human maintenance, human materials, human... Enough. The command cracked like plasma fire. Bring him here now. I will hear his explanation before you spin conspiracy. Vera bowed, stiff and formal. As you command. She left without another word, her staff clicking against deck plates that still smelled of Andrew's polymer compound. The human had gotten too close, too fast. Solana looked at him with eyes that held more than strategic interest, and now his technology was embedded in their most sacred military asset. Vera had served 3 generations of queens. She would serve this one, too, even if it meant protecting Solana from her own fascination with a grease-stained janitor who fixed things that should have stayed broken. Andrew arrived flanked by 2 honor guard, massive males with charcoal fur and plasma rifles. They hadn't touched him, hadn't spoken, just appeared at the armory and gestured. The walk to the royal forge felt like a march to execution. Solana waited inside, her armor still active, standing beside Vera. The priestess's milky eyes tracked him with predatory focus. The temperature in the forge seemed to drop 10 degrees. Andrew, Solana's voice held no warmth. The priestess has questions about your repairs, about signatures embedded in my armor. His stomach dropped. What kind of signatures? Vera pulled up the data, holographic code spiraling between them. Human, originating from the polymer matrix you applied. It's interfacing with the quantum lattice in ways we don't fully understand. Her staff tapped once against the deck. Explain. Andrew studied the code, his mind racing. The signature was there, clear as day now that someone had isolated it. A handshake protocol, exactly like the tactical officer had identified. But not sabotage. Never sabotage. It's a nanoforge activation sequence, he said quietly. Silence crashed through the forge. Impossible. Vera's voice came out flat. Human nanoforge technology was lost in the collapse. The colony ships carried only basic fabrication units. The New Providence carried a military-grade nanoforge in case of deep space manufacturing emergencies. Andrew met Solana's eyes, willing her to understand. It was locked behind biometric security. Human DNA signatures only. When I applied the polymer, the vibration patterns from the sonic toothbrush must have matched the activation frequency. I didn't mean to trigger it. I didn't even know it was there. Solana moved closer, her tail swaying slowly. The armor is responding to your DNA? Not mine specifically. Any human signature would work. Andrew pulled up secondary data on the tablet, highlighting the protocol structure. Your armor wasn't originally Valari, was it? The quantum lattice, the neutronium weave, this is human military technology. Old generation, pre-collapse design. Someone modified it for Valari use, but the core systems are human. Vera's staff hit the deck with a crack. You lie. The Royal Armorer crafted this suit from materials you salvaged from derelict human warships. Andrew's voice remained steady. I've seen the design specs. This is a Mark VII Sovereign-class combat suit. The Valari modified the interface points, adjusted the sizing, but you couldn't crack the nanoforge lockout. Until now. Solana's claws retracted, extended, retracted. A janitor knows our armor better than our own smiths. A systems engineer recognizes his own species' work. Andrew turned to face her fully, ignoring Vera's low growl. The polymer and vibrations didn't just repair the armor, they unlocked functionality that's been dormant for generations. Your suit is more efficient because it's finally operating the way it was designed to, with human oversight. Human control, Vera hissed. Human partnership. Andrew's hands curled into fists. I didn't sabotage anything. I fixed a system that was operating at half capacity. If you want to kill me for that, fine, but you'll lose the efficiency gains when the protocols decay without maintenance. Solana's tail coiled around Andrew's ankle. The gesture was possessive, protective, and entirely deliberate. Priestess, she said, her voice dropping to a purr that promised violence. Leave us. Vera's ears flattened. My queen, I must counsel. Leave. The word left no room for argument. The priestess bowed, shot Andrew a look that promised retribution, and swept from the forge. The door sealed behind her with finality. Solana rounded on Andrew, backing him against the forge's central fabricator, her hands braced on either side of his shoulders, claws scoring metal. You unlocked nanoforge technology in my armor and didn't think to mention it? I didn't know until 30 seconds ago. Andrew's pulse hammered. I was focused on fixing the feedback loops, not analyzing ancient human military protocols. Ancient human military protocols that make me dependent on your maintenance. Her face was inches from his. Do you understand what you've done? What Vera will make of this? I understand I saved your life, multiple times. Andrew's jaw set. I understand your armor works better now, and I understand that High Priestess wants my head because I'm human and I touched something sacred. Solana's lips pulled back from her fangs, but this time she was smiling. She wants your head because you're dangerous, because you represent change the old guard can't control. Her tail tightened around his ankle. Because when I look at you, I see partnership, not servitude. Partnership. Andrew's voice came out rough. Is that what we're calling this? What would you call it? He reached up slowly, carefully, and touched her cheek. Her skin was warm beneath his palm, her pulse racing beneath his fingers. Insanity, treason, the best mistake I've ever made. Solana's purr started low and built until Andrew could feel it in his bones. Then we're both traitors, Janitor, because I have no intention of stopping. She leaned closer, her breath warm against his lips. Can you teach others to access the nanoforge protocols? Any human could trigger them, but teaching the calibration, the maintenance routines, that takes time and expertise. Andrew's hand slid to the back of her neck. Why? Because if your DNA unlocks our armor, then humanity is not a client species to be protected. Her eyes blazed gold. Humanity is the key to winning this war, and I will not let Vera or anyone else waste that advantage. She kissed him then, fierce and claiming, her fangs careful against his lips. And Andrew kissed back, tasting combat stimulants and cinnamon, and the future reshaping itself around them. When she pulled back, her eyes held dangerous promise. Tonight, you teach me everything, every protocol, every sequence, every secret your species embedded in our armor. Her claws traced his jaw. Tomorrow, we show the fleet what partnership means. And Vera? Solana's smile was all predator. Let her plot. By the time she moves, we'll have already won. The Royal Guard captain found Andrew in the sanitation bay at 03 hours, which meant Vera's patience had lasted all of 6 hours. The massive male filled the doorway, charcoal fur bristling, one ear half missing from some ancient battle. His voice came out gravely, resigned. The priestess requests your presence in the chapel. Now. Andrew set down the polymer synthesis beaker. And if I refuse? Then I carry you. The captain's tail swayed once. Respectfully, human, I'd rather not. Her Majesty would take offense, and I enjoy having all my limbs attached. Fair point. Andrew wiped his hands on his jumpsuit. The stains never came out anyway, and followed the captain through corridors that smelled of recycled air and tension. Other crew members flattened themselves against bulkheads as they passed, ears pivoting to track the human who'd somehow become the center of palace intrigue in under 2 weeks. The chapel was a study in calculated intimidation. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into darkness. Bioluminescent moss traced ancient Velari script across the walls. Prayers to gods Andrew didn't know. Promises of protection he suspected were lies. At the center, Vera stood before an altar topped with a preserved scarved mandible, her robes catching the ghostly light. Leave us, she said without turning. The captain hesitated. The queen commanded. I absolve you of her command. Go. The door sealed behind him with finality. Andrew stood alone in a room designed to make people feel small, facing a priestess who'd orchestrated coups he'd never hear about. You have 10 words, Vera said, turning. Her milky eyes somehow found his. Convince me not to space you. Andrew's mind raced through possibilities, technical explanations, appeals to Solana's authority, desperate bargaining. Then he remembered what colony ship engineers learned first. Complicated lies failed. Simple truth survived. I love her. Kill me anyway. Vera's staff cracked against stone. That's 7 words. I'm efficient. For 3 heartbeats, silence held the chapel. Then Vera moved, faster than Andrew expected, her staff sweeping his legs. He hit the floor hard, breath exploding from his lungs. The preserved mandible appeared above his face, acid-pitted edges glinting. The last human who claimed to love a Velari queen poisoned 3 colonies before we caught him. Vera's voice dropped to a whisper. Humans are clever. Humans lie beautifully. Humans embed technology in sacred armor and call it accident. It was an accident. Andrew stayed still, watching her eyes, but I'm not sorry it happened. Because now you're irreplaceable. Now my queen needs you to maintain the protocols you unlocked. Very convenient for a janitor seeking advancement. I was trying to fix her armor so she wouldn't die. Andrew's voice cracked. I don't care about advancement. I don't care about palace politics. I care that she walks into Scarve Fire every day wearing a suit that was failing her, and I had the skills to fix it. Vera lifted the mandible higher. Pretty words. True words. Andrew forced himself to meet those milky eyes. You want proof? Fine. The nanoforge protocols require human biometric maintenance every 72 hours or they decay. If I wanted leverage, I'd let them decay until Solana was dependent on me. Instead, I spent last night teaching her the calibration sequences. She can maintain them herself now. The mandible lowered slowly. You taught her? Every sequence, every bypass, every failsafe. Andrew pushed himself upright, ignoring his screaming ribs. Because partnership means she doesn't need me, she chooses me. There's a difference. Vera stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something Andrew didn't expect. She laughed. Sharp and bitter, but genuine. You're either the most honest fool I've ever met, or the most skilled manipulator. Her staff tapped once. I cannot decide which is worse. I'm a janitor who fell in love with someone so far above my station it's comedy. Andrew's hands shook as he stood. If that's manipulation, I'm terrible at it. You are. Vera turned back to the altar, her shoulders slumping beneath her robes. Which is why I haven't killed you yet. Solana sees something in you, something pure, something we lost generations ago when we became Empire. She touched the mandible with careful claws. This is from the first scarve her mother killed, the start of a war we're losing. Andrew waited. The old ways are failing us, Vera continued. Pure bloodlines, sacred armor, isolation from client species, all failing. And then you appear, smelling of garbage and polymer, fixing what our best smiths couldn't. Her voice hardened. I should kill you. You represent everything the old guard fears. But my queen is winning. Her survival is paramount, and you are currently her most effective weapon. Vera turned, and her eyes held a chilling pragmatism Andrew hadn't seen before. Your function, for the moment, outweighs your heresy. So no, you are not spacing. She took a step toward him. But know this, human, when this war is over, the gods will still demand an accounting. Andrew's legs nearly gave out. Thank you. Thank me by keeping her alive. The priestess moved toward the door, then paused. And Andrew, if you break her heart, I won't space you. I'll make you watch as I dismantle everything you've built piece by piece before I finally grant you death. Clear? Crystal. Vera left him alone in the chapel, surrounded by prayers to gods he didn't know and promises he couldn't keep. Andrew slid down the wall, pressed his forehead to his knees, and let himself shake. He'd survived somehow. Now he just had to survive loving a queen during wartime. Solana found him an hour later, still sitting in the chapel, staring at nothing. She knelt beside him without a word, her tail coiling around his wrist. Vera told me, she said quietly, that she threatened to kill me in creative ways. That you taught me the protocols knowing I wouldn't need you anymore. Solana's claws traced his jaw with impossible gentleness. You gave away your leverage. It wasn't leverage, it was knowledge you deserved. Andrew turned to face her, noting the way her ears lay flat, the concern in her amber eyes. Partnership, remember? Partnership. She pulled him close, pressing her forehead to his. My mother had a saying, love is not possession, it's liberation. I never understood until now. Your mother was smarter than me. My mother died in Scarve Fire, still believing our traditions would save us. Solana's voice cracked. You're proving her wrong, and I'm grateful. Andrew's hands found her waist, pulling her closer. We should probably talk about what happens next. The protocols, the honor guard upgrades, how we present this to... She kissed him silent, soft and slow and tasting of tears she wouldn't shed in front of anyone else. When she pulled back, her eyes held fierce determination. What happens next is we win, together. Her claws traced his lips. But first, you rest. You've been awake for 30 hours. So have you. I'm wearing armor that no longer hurts me, thanks to a janitor who refuses to let anything stay broken. Solana stood, pulling him with her. Come. My quarters have a bed that's softer than chapel stone. That's not saying much. Her laugh echoed through the vaulted space, bright and genuine. And as they left the chapel together, queen and janitor, partnership incarnate, Andrew allowed himself to believe they might actually survive this. The small things mattered. Especially now. The gas giant Thalax IV filled the viewport like a watercolor bruise, purple and amber bands swirling beneath storm systems that could swallow Earth whole. The fleet hung in high orbit, 117 Velari ships bristling with weapons they prayed would be enough. Andrew floated in 0G beside the honor guard staging area, his tool belt tethered to his waist, watching Solana work. She moved through the assembled warriors like liquid death, checking seals, testing servos, her tail swaying with each adjustment. The upgraded armor gleamed under emergency lighting. 12 suits now carrying active nanoforge protocols, 12 warriors who'd trusted a human janitor enough to let him rewire their nervous systems. "Gauntlet response time," Solana called. "0.03 seconds," the guard captain rumbled, flexing his claws. "Down from 0.12. Power distribution. Optimal across all networks." The tactical officer's voice crackled through comms, her lavender skin visible through her helmet's transparent faceplate. "Human signatures confirmed in all 12 suits. We're reading efficiency gains of 40% across the board." Andrew pulled himself towards Solana, using handholds welded to the bulkhead. "The protocols will hold for 72 hours before requiring recalibration. After that, we teach more humans the sequences." Solana caught his ankle, her tail coiling around his calf to stop his drift. "I've already sent requests to the remaining colony ships. Any volunteers with engineering backgrounds get fast-tracked to fleet service." "You're building an army of janitors." "I'm building a partnership." Her eyes held fierce pride through her helmet's HUD. "Your people fix things, mine break them. Together, we're unstoppable." Alarms shrieked. The tactical display exploded with red, scarf signatures, dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace like tumors materializing in healthy tissue. The ambush Vera had warned about, the trap they'd walked into deliberately. "All hands, combat stations." Solana's roar carried through every speaker on every ship. "Honor guard with me. Human, stay." "No." Andrew grabbed his mop handle, still carbon nanotube composite, now reinforced with polymer matrix and sharpened to a point that could punch through hull plating. "You taught me the armor protocols. I taught you colony ship engineering. Seems fair. I show you what that means in practice." Solana's lips pulled back from her fangs. "You're insane." "You're dating me. What's that say about your judgment?" She kissed him through her open faceplate, quick and fierce and tasting of combat stimulants, then shoved him toward the equipment lockers. "Suit up. Sanitation department models only. And Andrew?" "Yeah? Don't die, I'll take it personally." The sanitation exosuit was never meant for combat. Designed for waste reclamation in hazardous environments, it looked like someone had wrapped a spacesuit around a garbage disposal and called it fashion. White polymer plating covered reinforced mesh. Waste processing tools hung from magnetic hardpoints. The helmet's HUD displayed atmospheric composition and biological contamination levels instead of tactical data. Andrew sealed it anyway, listening to the hiss of pressurization, feeling the suit's servos engage with familiar precision. He'd worn this model for 3 years on the New Providence. He knew every quirk, every weak point, every way to make it do things the manufacturer swore were impossible. Like weaponizing floor-polishing drones. He grabbed 6 from the maintenance cart, their spherical bodies gleaming chrome, their cleaning pads retracted to reveal the gravitic stabilizers beneath. In 0G, they were designed to maintain position while scrubbing surfaces. In combat, Andrew smiled behind his faceplate. The scarf hit the outer perimeter 30 seconds later. Solana launched first, plasma rifle blazing, her upgraded armor painting her in cyan light. The honor guard followed in perfect formation. Charcoal and silver and black, 12 warriors moving like a single organism. And behind them, ridiculous in white polymer and carrying a mop handle, Andrew pushed off the bulkhead and entered the void. Space combat in 0G was ballet written in violence. Solana moved like she was born to vacuum, her tail providing thrust and balance, her claws finding purchase on scarf hulls as she carved through boarding parties. The honor guard formed a protective sphere around her, their upgraded suits responding with inhuman precision. Andrew triggered the floor-polishing drones. They shot forward in geometric formation, 3 high, 3 low, their gravitic stabilizers repurposed into directed force projectors. The first Scarv warform never saw it coming. The drone hit its thorax with enough force to crack chitin, then bounced to the next target, and the next, each impact precisely calculated by salvaged waste processing algorithms that tracked contamination dispersal patterns. Turns out tracking garbage and tracking enemies used the same math. "What the hell are those?" The guard captain's voice crackled through comms. "Floor polishers." Andrew spun his mop handle, catching a scarf that had flanked the formation. the carbon nanotube composite punched through its head analog. Repurposed for kinetic impact. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever—" The captain's voice cut off as 3 scarves surrounded him. The drones vectored automatically, hitting them in sequence, buying him time to recover. "Still stupid?" Andrew asked. "I'm requisitioning 6 for my quarters." Solana's laugh carried through the comms, bright and fierce. She moved like fire incarnate, her armor channeling nanoforge energy into her claws until they blazed white-hot. Each strike cauterized as it cut. Each movement flowed into the next with the efficiency Andrew had built into her power distribution networks. They fell into rhythm without planning it. Solana carving through heavy targets, Andrew's drones controlling the flanks, the honor guard maintaining formation. The scarve pressed harder, more war forms pouring from boarding pods that looked like tumors budding from larger ships. And then Solana took a plasma lance to the shoulder. The impact spun her 90 degrees. Her armor held barely, but the force sent her tumbling into open space, thrusters firing erratically. 3 scarves vectored toward her, mandibles spread, acid already spraying. Andrew didn't think. Thinking was for problems you could solve with patience. He triggered his suit's waste ejection system, designed to jettison collected material at high velocity, and shot forward like a missile in white polymer armor. His mop handle extended, locked into combat position. The drones followed automatically, forming a spear point around him. He hit the first scarve, doing 30 meters per second. The composite handle went through its thorax. He used the momentum to spin, bringing the drones around in an arc that shattered the second scarve's legs. The third got his boots in its face as he kicked off, vectoring toward Solana. He caught her mid-tumble, magnetic hardpoints locking them together. Her eyes were wide behind her faceplate, ears flat with shock. "You just saved you using garbage disposal thrusters, yes." Andrew's hands found her shoulders, checking seals, verifying her armor's integrity. "Your left shoulder actuator is compromised. Can you fight?" "Watch me." Her tail wrapped around his waist, steadying them both. Then she kissed him through their faceplates, impossible and perfect, before kicking off toward the nearest scarve ship. Andrew followed, because what else could he do? The drones reformed their defensive pattern. The honor guard rallied around their queen. And together, warriors and janitor, partnership incarnate, they carved through the scarve ambush like it was just another problem to solve. When the last war form fell in pieces, when the scarve fleet finally broke and fled, Solana pulled Andrew close in the debris field. Her armor was scorched, dented, painted in ichor that steamed as it froze. His sanitation exosuit looked like it had been through a trash compactor. "Your floor polishers," she purred through comms, "are now standard honor guard equipment." "They're going to hate cleaning duty," Andrew managed. "They'll hate dying more." She pressed her faceplate to his. "You're terrifying, you know that?" "I'm a janitor." "You're my janitor." Her tail tightened around him. "And when we get back to the ship, I'm going to show you exactly what I think of humans who weaponize garbage." The guard captain's groan carried through the shared channel. "My quarters, 6 drones, and I never heard any of this conversation." Solana's laugh filled Andrew's helmet, warm and alive and perfect. They'd won. Together. The return to the Kethra's Fang was not a return to the same ship. The victory at Thalax IV was not just a successful ambush. It was a rout. The tactical reports flooding the bridge confirmed it. The Scarve fleet wasn't just in retreat. It was shattered. The flagship, the one carrying the brood mine that coordinated their assaults, had been carved open by Solana and her honor guard. Their nanoforge-enhanced claws, blazing with energy patterns Andrew had calibrated himself, had cut through a command center the Velari had never been able to breach. The war wasn't just turning. It was, for all intents and purposes, over. The Scarve, their central command structure decapitated, were falling back to their home system in disorganized chaos. Andrew found himself in the main forge 2 days later, not the maintenance bay. The air smelled of hot metal and ozone, but also, unmistakably, of cafeteria polymer. The first contingent of human engineers, fast-tracked from the remaining colony ships per Solana's order, had arrived. They were clustered around a Velari armorer, a massive, scarred male with charcoal fur who a week ago would have sooner spaced a human than spoken to one. Now, he was listening intently as Andrew, still in his grease-stained jumpsuit, explained the principles of acoustic dampening using a holographic display and a sonic toothbrush. "It's not about raw power," Andrew said, his voice echoing in the large space. "It's about resonance. The Velari systems are powerful, but they create feedback, noise, the human protocols, the nanoforge. It doesn't just add power, it listens, it adapts, it creates harmony instead of noise." He looked up as the forge doors hissed open. Solana entered, not in her armor, but in formal command silks. Her tail swayed with a calm, satisfied rhythm. But she wasn't alone. High Priestess Vera walked beside her. The forge fell silent. The human engineers tensed. The Velari armorers dipped their heads in respect. Vera's milky eyes scanned the room, taking in the mixed species teams, the human tech integrated into Velari workstations, the lingering smell of polymer. Her face was an unreadable mask. She stopped directly in front of Andrew. "Janitor," she said, her voice was flat. "Priestess," Andrew replied, his hand instinctively moving to his tool belt. Vera held out her staff. Hanging from it was a sash of office, woven from neutronium fibers and inlaid with cybernetic filaments, the unmistakable insignia of the royal armorer. "The old armorer has retired," Vera said, her voice carrying across the silent forge. He felt his traditions were no longer adequate. She held the sash out to him. "The Queen requires a new royal armorer, one who understands partnership." Andrew stared at the sash, then at his hands still stained with polymer. I'm a systems engineer. I'm not—" "You are what the Empire needs," Vera cut in, her voice softening almost imperceptibly. "You are a fixer of broken things, Andrew Chen, and our Empire was very broken." She draped the sash over his shoulders, her claws brushing his jumpsuit. "Do not make me regret this, human." "I won't," Andrew said, the weight of the sash settling on him. "I know," Vera turned to Solana. "My queen. The Council has ratified the Human Partnership Protocol. The colony ships are now sovereign allies, not clients. Your revolution is complete." Solana's hand found Andrew's, her claws lacing through his fingers. "It's not a revolution, Priestess. It's an innovation." Vera's lips pulled back just slightly from her fangs. It was the Velari equivalent of a smile. "So it is." She bowed, a deep, respectful gesture that stunned the Velari armorers and swept from the forge. Andrew looked down at the sash, then at Solana. "Royal armorer? Me? I still use a mop handle as a weapon." "And now you can requisition official carbon nanotube mop handles," Solana purred, pulling him close. "The forge is yours, Andrew. The fleet is yours. Teach them. Show them how to fix what's broken." "And what about you?" he asked, his hands finding her waist. "Me?" Her amber eyes blazed with a new light, not just the fire of a warrior, but the steady glow of a leader who had found her future. "I have a war to end, peace to negotiate, and a partner to come home to." She kissed him, slow and deep, uncaring of the audience. "Now get to work, Mr. Armorer. The Kethra's fang has a few scratches from the battle. I'd like you to look at them." Epilogue. 1 year later. The Kethra's fang hung in orbit, not over a battlefield, but over a blue-green world, New Providence. The colony ship Andrew had left floated nearby, a relic of a bygone era, its people now integrating into the Velari Human Alliance. The flagship itself was transformed. Its hull was a seamless weave of neutronium and self-repairing polymer. Cyan gold light pulsed from its engines, a perfect fusion of Velari power and human efficiency. On the bridge, the crew was mixed. A human tactical officer worked beside a lavender-skinned Velari navigator. The air was filled with clicks, purrs, and the flat tones of human technical speak. And it was immaculate. High Priestess Vera, now head of the Alliance Diplomatic Corps, watched the colony ship on the main viewer. "They are resourceful," she admitted, watching a human-piloted shuttle dock using repurposed gravitic floor polishers. "They're engineers," a voice said from the command throne. Andrew sat in the secondary command chair, a position built for him, his royal armorer's sash draped over a clean new jumpsuit. He was monitoring the ship-wide systems, his console a blend of Velari script and human code. Solana stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. her tail coiled loosely around the chair's base. She wore her armor, as she always did, but the helmet was off, and her ears were relaxed, pointed forward in contentment. "The Scarf-Brood Mines signed the armistice last week," Solana said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of a queen who had won. "They will keep to their," she corrected herself, "our terms. The war is over." "A war we won because we stopped trying to be strong and started being smart," Vera said. She looked at Andrew. "Because one of us was willing to care about the small things." Andrew smiled. "A clogged filter breaks a civilization, priestess. A clean connection saves one." Vera actually chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "So it does. I will leave you. The diplomatic shuttle awaits." She paused at the door. "Her Majesty, Mr. Armorer, it is good to see you." She left. Andrew leaned back, releasing the system diagnostics. "Mr. Armorer, I'm still not used to that." "You'd prefer consort?" Solana purred, leaning down to nuzzle his neck. "I'd prefer Andrew." He captured her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "So, the war is over, the Scarf are beaten, the fleet is upgraded. What's next?" Solana's amber eyes turned from him to the star chart illuminating the viewport. It was a map of their new combined territory. "Peace," she whispered. "My people were warriors, your people were survivors. We taught each other how to live." She tapped the console, and the star chart was replaced by a schematic, a new colony ship, a joint Valari-human design. "The first of the Alliance fleet," she said. "Not a warship, a new Providence, as you called it, a ship for families." "A closed system," Andrew said, his engineer's mind already tracing the power conduits, seeing the polymer-infused recycling systems. "It'll need regular maintenance." "It will." Solana traced the line of his jaw. "It will need someone who cares about the small things, and I will need a partner to help me rule the peace we've built." He stood, and she met him in an embrace, queen and engineer, Valari and human. He was still a janitor at heart, a man who believed in maintenance. And she was still a warrior, a queen who believed in strength. "I'm here," Andrew said, kissing her. "I'm not going anywhere.